Oihaskauhaut, Pisinaxio, Chaya Squeeze, Asiu. I guess I would like to begin by welcoming all of you to the territory of the Okanagan people. Okay, note to file, generally speaking, when you organize a meeting like this and you come into the Indigenous territory of First Nations people and you want to have a traditional welcome, the practice is to seek out an elder, to find through the local leadership an elder to come up and do the invocation and the blessing. And the elder will offer a prayer and some good words for your meeting. Political leaders, generally speaking, don't do that. We offer welcoming remarks and that type of thing. So, and you give the elder a gift, and when you're asking them, sometimes you offer tobacco and whatnot. And believe me, word gets around. There are a lot of groups, as you know, that come to Penticton. Like there are dozens, if not hundreds of groups, and very seldom are we approached. But when we are approached, we take note of that. So just something to consider. I must say, when I first arrived, I began to gauge things from the parking lot. And I saw like hundreds of cars out there, and I thought, wow, the Green Party is really growing. And I saw lots of people out in the parking lot, and they were dressed in athletic apparel. I guess there must be some kind of training session going on or something, but they were out there doing stretches and whatnot, and I was thinking, woo. At any rate, I am pleased to be here to offer a few remarks vis-a-vis the worldview of the Indigenous people in the province of British Columbia, the state of affairs, and whatever else you might want to discuss this morning. I don't have a lot of time. I have a wedding to do in Merritt. Among other things, I'm a marriage commissioner. So I believe the husband is NDP and the bride is Green Party. And I expect this marriage to last. No, it's something I've been doing for quite a number of years now, and I greatly enjoy doing it. It's very emotional, and I absolutely support the institution of marriage. I wish Joan was here. Joan and I have been married for going on 26 years now. We've been together for 32 years, and it was the politics of the struggle that brought us together, and needless to say, it's the politics of the struggle that has sustained our relationship for all this time. We have 6 adult children ranging in age from 32 to 40. And they have blessed us with 9 grandchildren. And for those of us that have been blessed with grandchildren, it absolutely changes your worldview. And certainly has been the case with us. They're the center of our universe, needless to say. I first became involved in the Indian movement, as we used to describe it back in the day, in the very early 70s. And those were some tumultuous times, and quite often I look back on those times with a sense of nostalgia, because back in those days there was a very pronounced sense of social consciousness. Throughout North America, we had the Civil Rights Movement, we had the anti-Vietnam War movement. Within our world, we had the American Indian movement, and Red Power was very much something that swept through our communities and captured the imagination and the energies of our young people, including yours truly. It's interesting, Joan and I were both involved in the movement at that time, and we didn't know each other. We were at the same marches and rallies and involved in the same issues, the Leonard Peltier issue. And amazingly, we never met until sometime later when Joan was a member of the Vancouver Indian Centre Board of Directors. And there was a young lady that seemed to enjoy my company, and she was also on the board. So she asked me if I would be willing to fill a vacancy, which I said I would be more than happy to do that. I was on the board of directors of the Friendship Center locally here. And lo and behold, I sat down at my first board meeting and looked down the table, and there was Joan. And the first time I'd ever laid eyes on Joan was long before that. Her sister had written a book. Her sister is one of the most prolific Indigenous writers in Canada, Lee Miracle. And right in the middle of that book was Joan's picture. It was a full headshot. And she had such captivating eyes, and I never did read the book. But I kept picking it up and turning to that page and looking at Joan's picture, never dreaming someday I would actually meet this lady. And as they say, the rest is history. From that point forward, Joan and I were together ever since. And again, I wish she was here. Generally, we do this together. Wounded Knee was happening at that time. Here in British Columbia, there was the armed standoff at Cache Creek. Back in Ontario, it was the armed standoff at Anishinaabe Park outside of Kenora, Ontario. And very, very volatile times. There were movements back in those days, which we don't seem to have today. We don't have those kinds of movements. The music was very helpful. The songs made sense back then. They were about human rights and human values and justice, and now God knows what that music is about. I can't even understand it. And what I do understand is this shockingly violent. And so I think it is truly a reflection on society. I think back in those days there was a great deal of concern about each other as human beings and about the land and whatnot. And over the space of time, that has slipped by the wayside. And in many ways, the values of materialism and consumerism and the corporate agenda has seized hold of everyone. And it's just unbelievable what's going on. I think the Olympics were a pretty good example of that commercialism and whatnot. It was just absolutely ridiculous in my view. I started out as I'm happy to say that I was one of the very few voices that spoke out against the Olympics, which was a very difficult thing to do in the Indigenous world, given the fact that there was such an indoctrination campaign that went on in our world about you had to stand tall and salute the Olympic flag or you would be purged and sent to the gulag. And yet I managed to talk to the international press quite a bit, and I kept speaking about the brutal and crushing poverty in our communities, and that we really had very little to celebrate. And